to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. I'm your host, Andre The Beast Crayton. Today is a beautiful Saturday. We got guests coming in all day long. I'm excited, but I'm even more excited about the guests that we have on now by way of Zoom, all the way from Naples, Brooklyn's girl.
Hey, Andre, how are you? Lorraine Geraci here. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Hey, no problem. So we talked last night, so much information. Tell the viewers a little bit about you.
Thank you. Well, I am not only a learning and development professional and a mortgage consultant and coach for a lot of personal professional development. I'm also the author of Living a Rockstar Life, and I'm also in the process of writing 2 more books on totally different subjects that I'm very excited about as well.
Let's start right now with the first book. What led us into that book before we get into the second book?
So Living a Rockstar Life, I started writing in the early 2000s. It took me forever to write it. And one of the reasons I wanted to be because I was talking to a lot of different people professionally, personally, and I found that so many people were complaining and always looking at the negative side of things or reasons why they weren't able to obtain something or they were not having the life that they wanted. So I put together Living a Rockstar Life to put my spin on how to get out of your own way and focus on things that are important to you so that way you can be happier and have the life that you really want to have.
What were some of the things that was important to you that actually led you down that? When we talked last night, there was a series of incidents. Mm-hmm. And we won't say incidents as bad things that happened, but let's just say there was a whole lot of life experiences that you found out at a young age. Take the viewers down there.
Yeah. So, growing up in the state of New York, I had such a great family life in childhood. It was really wonderful. I had some wonderful friends too. As I started getting older and getting into the professional part of my life, both, sometimes personally with family members and friends, but often in my professional life, I found that so many people were walking around with their heads hung low. They were unhappy. They were always complaining about things, and it started to really gnaw at me. And I recognized it as I got older and got into more of the professional mindset. Why is everybody so down? Mm-hmm. And I was always looked at as this perky, positive person, very different from a lot of people, very unusual.
What do you mean very unusual and perky? Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know what? People think if you're happy most of the time or you're positive, that something's wrong, you're hiding something, right. Or that there's, they just don't look at people that are kind of on a level 10 most of the time, not all the time, as, being a bad thing or not, true to themselves or, really kind of hiding something, which was not the case at all. I had this spirit about me that I wanted to share with everybody else. And most of the time it worked, but sometimes it didn't. And I found that people were kind of like pushed away from me because they felt the sun was too bright, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I realized I had to learn as I got older. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. It used to bother me when I was a kid. And as I got older, I'm okay with it because thankfully it's not a lot. And I dealt with that. And that's what made me write the book. I wanted to give my experience through my life at that time. I became a professional coach. I also worked in a corporate environment that allowed me the opportunity to grow with team members and some really great people. And I wrote the book. It's pretty short. It's under 100 pages to really give people an understanding of here's how I took it upon myself to really focus on the positive things, manifesting the life that I wanted to have, and taking action and making decisions to get there rather than having a woe is me moment all the time.
Tell me a little bit about your foundation with your mom, your dad, your siblings. You said you were looked at a little bit different, so yeah. Take us into that dynamics, into that household in the Brooklyn, New York area.
Well, funny enough, I lived in Brooklyn for about 6 months, right? And that's funny. I always joke around about people. I said, I got tired of the place, kind of got out. I was adopted when I was 6 months old from Brooklyn. I was born in Brooklyn and moved to the Hudson Valley of New York with my family, mom and dad, and I had an adopted younger brother. And as time went on, my folks divorced and remarried, and I had more siblings. And I consider myself a pretty lucky kid because my family grew from those experiences. And thankfully, everybody got along. There wasn't anything, horrible to discuss. And I just had such an extended family. And that's how I grew to be that family is not always blood, not just because I was adopted and so is my brother, but I had step siblings that I am so close to this day. And we grew up together. And, Christmases are pretty cool, right? I got a variety of different places to go and share my life with so many different people. But even throughout all that, Andre, I always felt like, even though I know I'm loved very much to this day, I think a lot of my family members looked at me like, gosh, she's a little out there. Very, very positive and, bouncy, for lack of better words. And that wasn't always looked at as maybe a good thing. Sometimes people think, well, if you're like that, you don't care about what's going on. Or, I don't watch the news. I don't allow negative things to bother me too much. I'm human. Because I kind of let it roll off me most of the time. And sometimes people think that that's, well, you don't care. You're burying your head in the sand, or you don't want to know about what's going on in the world and things of that nature. And I'm like, no, that's not true. I don't choose to allow it to kind of get inside of me and, take on that negativity, because what happens is it affects me. And then it also affects all the people that I am around, whether it's friends, work-related folks, or family members. And sometimes people look at that as, being unique, different, and not the norm, I guess.
When the individuals around you and yourself start recognizing there was something different, and you mentioned two of you guys were adopted.
Yes. Yes.
When did you start to wonder about your biological parents? Was it ever brought up by your adopted parents? Did your siblings say anything about it? Or what was that spark that you said, I'm going to ask? Or who asked first?
Well, I've known about the adoption ever since I was old enough to understand. My parents were open from the get-go about all of that. When I was a kid, to be honest with you, Andre, I didn't really care. I honestly, I was happy. I had loving family members. It didn't really bother me at all. Right. And I never really wanted to look for my biological family until I got older. And as I got older and I had a daughter of myself, then I started thinking a little bit more about it. Now you're curious, gosh, what were they like? Am I like them? Do I look like them? And then you get even older and then you worry about, backgrounds and health, right? And, are they still alive? Do they have health issues that I have to worry about as I age, right? So not until I was in my 50s did I even start to look for them, because now we have more means to be able to find things, right? All these, Ancestry, 23andMe, all these DNA components. At one point I thought I was going to hire a private investigator, but I found it to be expensive at the time. And I just didn't do it until the DNA stuff came about.
But what was the main trigger though? Because it didn't bother you. And no. I guess I'm a believer that, okay, it may not bother you now when you're young. It may not bother you when I say when we're in our 20s, we're kind of young and reckless in our 20s and 30s. Then all of a sudden in the 30s, maybe stuff starts to click. I mean, what was that clicking moment that you said, I'm really wondering here?
It started clicking for me when I was in my 40s a little bit. And as I was raising my daughter, and she was a teenager at the time, I was curious to maybe think about, well, gee, what happened with my birth family? Should I know of anything that my daughter and I need to be aware of as we, what I mean from health and, whether it's physical, mental health and things of that nature. And like I said, I looked into it from, to a private investigation team. And the state of New York has what's called closed adoption. So it's
Okay.
much harder to find all those details. And my parents didn't really have a tremendous amount of information on where they got me from. They had a little bit. So I
Right.
kind of pushed it to the side. And then as I got in my 50s, I took a trip to Greece. We talked about this, right? And when I
Right.
was there, I was with my best friend and her husband, and her husband's from Greece. And he said to me, he goes, he says in his accent, Lorraine, you look Greek to me, And I said, well, I think I'm Italian and Polish. That's what I grew up thinking.
Right. Right.
So what are you thinking? To find out so I did ancestry.com, and I found out I was definitely mostly Italian. And I also had some Eastern European in me. So I didn't know what that really meant. But I didn't find any, family members that were really close, third, fourth, fifth cousins and things like that. Nobody responded to my emails. So then last year, I'm sitting at the dining room table with a couple friends of mine, and they were telling me a story about their stepmom who found her birth father through 23andMe. And
Okay.
as they're telling me the story and showing me the app on the phone, I literally pulled out my phone and I ordered the kit right in front of them. I said, let me try that. I have an instinct. It was an instinctive, snap decision, which sometimes I do. You know what I mean? I made snap decisions sometimes.
Okay.
Other times they're thought out. But in this case, it was like a trigger. So I sent in the sample. I went home for the holidays, came back, and when I got the results, I found that I was Italian, mostly Italian, 70-something%. Then I saw German and Irish. And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't celebrated St. Patrick's Day like a champ in all these 55 years. What's wrong? So I found a connection
Right.
with a DNA match with a woman who was really close. And it said first cousin once removed. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the closest
Right.
I've ever gotten. I contact her. Long story short, she is the great niece of my birth mother. And that is how I found her literally in one day. And she
Wow.
responded right away. And we have been in touch. We've met a couple times and
How
speak.
did you find her on social media?
What's that?
How did you find her on social media?
No, so her great niece that I connected with put us together. We exchanged emails and we started communicating via email for a while. And then we, shared phone numbers and FaceTimed one another. And I went out there in February of this past year and met her for the very first time in Las Vegas.
So now the Pandora box is being opened. You're getting excited. How do you now get introduced to your mom?
So, I mean, we introduced through the Great Niece connection, we introduced one another and we got to know each other quite a bit before we met in person, through email exchange, talking on the telephone and things of that nature. And I didn't see her until I met her for the first time, and that was her request. She wanted our first visual encounter to be in person, not via
Oh,
any kind of social media or FaceTime or anything like that. I went there with a birth cousin of mine that happens to live down in Florida half the year. So strange how all that worked out. And her and I went on this trip together because it's her aunt, and she went to go see her with me. And it was absolutely wonderful. It was a fabulous experience. I was a little nervous because you hear about some of these folks that meet their birth family and either it's positive or it's negative, right? Somebody doesn't want to be bothered, but in this case, it was welcomed with warm arms, and I was really excited to be part of that, and still to this day. So we've met twice in person, and we talk all the time. And I really got to learn so much about her, which in turn helped me learn more about me.
what's the first thing that you tell somebody that's your biological parent that you haven't seen in almost 40 years?
Well, 55
How do you
years.
even start a conversation?
Yeah.
Like what was the conversation when you first met? What was her first reply once she heard from you?
Basically, oh my God, I finally found you. And she had shared that she had tried to find me a few years back, and she had hired somebody to do so. and wound up getting scammed, out of some money. So she was just, kind of just resigned herself to the fact that, oh my goodness, well, I have my memories and all this other stuff. I don't, and didn't think that it would ever happen. She was ecstatic, but she took it upon herself to explain to me everything that happened, all the reasons for the adoption. She talked to me about my birth father, and I got clarity and understanding of how everything came to be and how I was able to be adopted by my family and what happened to her after that, what paths she took after that happened, and in her entire story. And she was so open with telling me everything. It was lovely to hear. And it's funny because Andre, one of the things I did before I met her is I went through all of my photos that I've had since I was 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And I made copies of them, and I put them in a little photo album. And I handed it to her as a gift when I was there so she can see me growing up. Get choked up about it. It was lovely. I couldn't believe her face. Imagine not being able to raise somebody, doesn't matter the reasons. And then you have a book in front of you that takes you from 6 months to 55 years old, that you can go through and order and see the child growing up and how she grew up.
What was three of the most impactful parts of your mom's conversation that still today resonate? Because you didn't go there with judgmental eyes.
No.
Went there to understand who you are as a human being.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Clearly you brought joy to a lady that did try to reach out to the best of her ability based on age and information that she had. But now that you've met her from Brooklyn all the way to Florida now, why you left Greece, I have no idea, but that's a whole different topic. Yeah. But what's the three most impactful things out of her opening up to you that you remember the most, that you will always carry?
Well, I think the first thing is I realized where my personality came from. The more I got to know her and speak to her, the more I realized we are very similar as far as our mannerisms, our energy, our personality, our creative side. I'm a writer, obviously, so is she. She's artistic, I'm not, and creative, but not artistic. And also, there's a sense of instinctive clairvoyancy, for lack of better words, that she has. And I always felt that there was some kind of instinctive nature about myself that I couldn't really explain, not psychic or anything like that, but very instinctive, very spiritual, believing in the universal energy, spirit guides. And a lot of people that I know, other than a couple of friends, probably think I'm a little nuts when I talk about it, but she didn't. She shared that. She's very transparent. She's very into astrology and studying, stars and, birth dates. She does birth charts. And she made me, when I went there, and my cousin, a beautiful painting that captured my essence before she even met me. Really? And it was called the Healer of Hearts. She calls me Healer of Hearts. And it was all purple, which is my aura and my color, and with a heart in the middle that kind of, and I have it wrapped up in storage right now to put up when I buy my new home, and I'm going to display it. It was so wonderful. So that was a big part of understanding more about who I am, personality wise, definitely came from her. I also felt like, she totally understood me. She even had my birth certificate with my original name on it that she named me and handed that to me. She shared jewelry with me from her mother, who I was named after. And she also told me a little bit about my birth father, who I look just like. And it was helpful to me to be able to see, because although I don't really look like her, we have similar eyes, I look more like birth dad. And unfortunately, he passed away almost 2 years ago now, and I never got a chance to meet him, and he didn't even know about me. So it was good to at least know that and have a sense of understanding and I felt like I accomplished what I needed to, and I still am enjoying the relationship. And this lady even called my mother and my stepmom and has developed a relationship with the two of them as well over the phone, on FaceTime. And my family's so happy that I found her, which was so nice to have that support.
Now, you a mother yourself, two daughters.
Yes,
Who was the first person that you shared this joyous moment with?
my
When you just found out,
daughter.
you shared it with your daughter. What was their response?
You know, she was very happy for me. Initially, she was a little skeptical because, people, she's like, has the eyes of, all right, is somebody trying to pull the wool over your eyes? Are you
Hmm.
sure that this is the right, you know what I mean? Are you sure
Hmm.
that this is the person? Because, people hear about scams all the time and folks, acting like they're certain people to get something from somebody. So her first thing was protecting her mom, and making sure that nobody was trying to do anything wrong to me. And then when I showcased to her that that's not the case, she was really happy for me. She was raised, she's very close to me. She's very close to her grandparents. And, so she has that sense of loyalty to them. So she was glad that I had developed this relationship and continue to this day. And she's just smiling and happy for me from a distance.
That sounds so delightful. I
Yep.
could just imagine what she must be going through to finally get to see and embrace her daughter.
Yeah.
With that said, what's next for you? What did you get out of that? What's the next journey now that you from Brooklyn to Naples, Greece? What's next? What's next?
So I am in the process of writing a book called Girls from Brooklyn. And the book is going to be a novel that is based on the story of finding my birth mom and taking that whole detail of based on a true story and turning it into a fictional novel. So I am halfway done with that right now. And I just, as we're writing it, I'm saying, wow, it's becoming such an amazing journey that, again, based on a true story, but certainly has some, fictional directions in it from, powers and clairvoyancy. And I tell people, I'm like, it's kind of got to be my
Right.
story married with Harry Potter. So that's all I'll tell you right now. So I'm excited to get that accomplished and share that with everybody for inspiration and also entertainment, and belief in something. I never thought this was going to happen, especially at age 55. I was like, wow, I'm so glad that I was able to get this accomplished while at least she was still here.
Right,
I
right.
could have found her and her not be with us any longer. So there's a reason for everything.
What do you tell the viewers now? Like in a quick summary, and if somebody's in that situation, how do you navigate them to keep moving forward to maybe finding out who their parents are or somebody that might have been in that same situation that you're in?
Yeah. So whether it's trying to look for, your birth family, or whether it's trying to accomplish a task, or, make one of your dreams come true, regret is the hardest thing that you're going to have to ever live with. Sometimes people are scared to make, decisions or take chances or go find something. Oh my gosh, if I do that, I'm afraid what I'm going to find. Well, I think you'll be more fearful if you don't do things, if you don't take chances. And if you are looking for biological family members for whatever your own reasons, there's so much out there to help you right now. I'd say 23andMe was just unbelievable that it was able to allow me to find this, for myself, for her. And there's so many other family members that I didn't even know I had that I've become close with as a result of this too. So take chances, take a quantum leap. Don't necessarily hide behind what ifs and fear. Because throughout my life, even through other things that I've gone through personally and professionally,
Right.
if I did that, I wouldn't be anywhere right now. I'd be under a rock still complaining about what I don't have,
Right.
where I'm not. right? And I'm focusing on all the great things that have happened, and certainly this being one of them. Writing The Secrets to Having the Best Team Ever. That's another book that I'm writing right now, along with some amazing mentors that have been wonderful and team members I've worked with too. So building relationships, communicating with people that matter, and helping others and bringing them value along the way,
Right.
no matter what your dreams and aspirations are. Take the chance, make the decision.
Now, I didn't ask this question, but I think I'm going to ask now before we wrap up.
Sure.
Were there moments that you were afraid? And if you were, what were those moments?
What comes to mind, number one, you get fearful. Gosh, when I first had my daughter, and, fearful that you're going to be, am I going to be a good parent? I have to keep this little baby alive, right? And grow her up. And now she's 31 with a baby of her own. And that's just a miracle. But certainly it's scary to be a parent, but also a very rewarding. And another thing is I've been an independent person for most of my adult life.
Right.
I've been pretty entrepreneurial. I've been in corporate America. I've been involved in non-for-profit things and established a lot of friends. And sometimes when a curveball is thrown at you that you didn't expect, derailing you from your train, that's scary, because sometimes you don't know that you were supposed to be derailed and put you in a different direction. And part of the reason I'm even here talking to you, and part of the reason that I'm even focusing on these books that I've written or am writing, is because I got derailed off that train and because I was scared. So sometimes there's a reason for everything.
I like the way you said that. How can the viewers reach out to you?
So I have a website. It's cpclorraine.com, and it showcases all the different things I'm working on, including the books, my coaching and consulting for mortgage and sales professionals, personal professional development. Or I would love for you to send me an email at coachlorraine2014@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to help anybody that would like to get in touch with me reach their potential and their dreams.
Lorraine, leave the viewers with something positive, because clearly, you walk in a positive universe and you let very little negativity come into that space. And when it does come in, you have the power somehow to turn it into something good. Leave the viewers with something positive before we leave out.
One of the greatest things that you can do for yourself and others is be true to who you are. Don't try to be anybody else, and don't let anybody derail you from your direction, because only you can add value to yourself and others by being the very, very best version of yourself. So never stop personal, professional development on who you are. It's going to lead you in amazing paths.
And this has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show.